The SOS, the stars were silent. For thousands of years, the great black emptiness of space had swallowed cries for help without ever giving an answer. But tonight, something broke that silence. A voice, weak, desperate, echoed across the void. Anyone, please, help us. It wasn't a normal distress call. The signal carried strange tones like an old song no one remembered. It traveled through dead satellites, abandoned stations, and broken relays. Most systems ignored it, thinking it was static. But deep beneath the mountains of Antarctica, in a place no human had visited for 2 centuries, an ancient machine heard it and woke up. The signal reached Outpost K-17, a secret communication station hidden under a mile of ice. The place was dark, covered in frost. For 200 years, its doors had been locked, its halls empty. But now, red warning lights flickered to life. A voice, mechanical and cold, whispered through empty corridors. Incoming signal detected. Alliance code Omega. Activating protocol. Miles away in a small Antarctic research camp, Lieutenant Mara Voss sat alone in a cramped control room. She was the only human assigned to monitor the old lines, forgotten communication frequencies that had been silent her entire career. She had grown used to the quiet, drinking bitter coffee and staring at dead screens, but suddenly her console flashed. A sound crackled through the speakers. At first, she thought it was a prank. Then she heard the words clearly. Humanity's guardians, we beg you. They are burning our worlds. Mara leaned forward, heart pounding. Guardians? No one called Earth that. Not in her lifetime, not in anyone's. She tried to trace the signal, but it kept jumping, bouncing between relay stations that shouldn't even exist anymore. The ground trembled. She froze, thinking it was an earthquake. But then it came again, deep, powerful, like something huge moving under the ice. Her radio hissed with static, then another voice, colder this time. Lieutenant Voss, stand by for activation. She sat up straight. Activation of what? There was no reply, only the sound of something massive unlocking far beneath her feet. Outside, the Antarctic wind screamed across the frozen plains. The research camp's floodlights flickered. From a mile away, Mara saw it. A crack opening in the ice, wide and unnatural. Steam hissed out as if the earth itself were breathing. Then, slowly, a metal tower rose from the crack. It was black with age, covered in strange golden markings that caught the moonlight. Her console beeped again. A name appeared on the screen. Sentinel-3 online. Who are you? Mara whispered. I am Sentinel-3, the voice replied, deep and metallic. One of the last watchers. The SOS has been received. The time has come. What SOS? Who sent it? A friend, Sentinel-3 said. A very old friend. They saved us once. We made a promise. Now we must keep it. Before Mara could speak, the tower's golden lines glowed brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. The ice shook harder. Far on the horizon, other towers began to rise, across mountains, valleys, and frozen seas. Each one was waking up, shaking off centuries of silence. Mara felt a strange mix of fear and awe. What are these towers? Not towers, Sentinel-3 said. The locks to the vaults. Vaults? Yes, the voice said. Where the guardians sleep. She swallowed. Guardians? You mean people? No, Sentinel-3 answered slowly. Machines. War machines. The first and last line of defense, built in the time before memory, when the galaxy burned. Mara stared at the glowing metal. Her breath formed clouds in the cold air, but she barely noticed. Something was moving beneath the ice, and it was getting closer, so close she could hear the grinding of gears, the size of buildings. The SOS repeated again over the speakers, but this time she heard more words. They will come for you too. We cannot hold them. Please. Hurry. Her blood ran cold. Sentinel, what is coming? There was a long pause. The ground rumbled like a sleeping giant rolling over. Then the machine's voice came, heavier than before. The Voric swarm. Devourers of worlds. They are already on their way. A shadow fell across the camp as a shape rose from the crack in the ice, a massive armored figure, taller than any building Mara had ever seen. Its eyes glowed like dying suns. It looked down at her, silent and still, until Sentinel's voice echoed in her mind. Guardian 1 is awake. And somewhere far beyond Earth, in the dark between stars, the Vorik ships turned toward their new target, the Awakening. The storm above Antarctica had grown worse overnight. Snow whipped across the frozen plains, hiding the strange cracks in the ice from satellites. But beneath that white emptiness, the world was changing. The first Guardian had risen. Its massive frame stood half buried in ice, steam pouring from vents along its shoulders. The metal looked ancient yet unbroken, carved with strange symbols that seemed to shift when Mara looked at them too long. It did not move, yet the air around it thrummed with power, like the heartbeat of something far too big to exist on Earth. Inside the control tower, Mara stared at the glowing console. Sentinel 3's voice was calm but heavy, as if carrying the weight of centuries. Guardian 1 has completed initial wake cycle. More will follow. Mara swallowed hard. More? How many are there? 27, Sentinel replied. Scattered across the planet, buried deep, hidden where no one would find them. Until now. The ground shook again. Somewhere far below, gears the size of mountains began to turn. Vast doors, untouched for 200 years, slid open with a groan that echoed through the ice. The sound was not just noise, it was a memory, a warning. Far away, under the deserts of Egypt, sand exploded upward as something enormous pushed free. In the Mariana Trench, a dark shape rose from the abyss, glowing eyes piercing the black water. On a remote island in the Pacific, the ground split, revealing a machine shaped like a crouching beast, its armor wet with centuries of seawater. The Guardians were waking. Mara's mind raced. Sentinel, why now? Why not before? The SOS, Sentinel said simply. It carries the Alliance Code, a promise made in the last days of the Great War. Humanity swore to answer if our allies called for help. We cannot break that vow. But Earth doesn't even remember that war, Mara whispered. That is because they chose to forget, Sentinel replied. The Guardians were locked away. After victory came fear. Leaders decided that such power was too dangerous, so they buried us. Mara stared at the snow-covered giant outside. Then why were you left running? Sentinel's voice grew quieter. To wait for the signal, to watch the stars, and to awaken the others when the time came. A deep rumble shook the ice again, but this time, it wasn't coming from below. Mara stepped outside, shielding her eyes from the snow. On the horizon, another crack was opening, this one wider, glowing with molten light. Something massive rose, pulling itself into the storm. She gasped. This Guardian was different. 4 arms, each tipped with weapons that hummed with energy. Its head turned slowly, scanning the white world with cold precision. Then, without warning, it knelt, lowering itself as if listening to something only it could hear. Sentinel's voice followed. Guardian 6 acknowledges your presence, Lieutenant Voss. It recognizes you as Commander of Record. What? I'm not a commander? Mara protested. You are now, Sentinel said. The Guardians will follow the one who wakes them. Before she could respond, her console beeped again, this me with a signal so sharp it made her ears ring. The holographic display lit up with a dark shape moving through the solar system. Sentinel's tone shifted. They are here. Mara's stomach tightened. The Vorak? Yes, Sentinel answered. Scouts, they will not attack yet. They will watch, measure, and send word to the swarm, but they have already seen the Guardians moving. The war has begun. The 2 colossal machines outside turned toward the same point in the sky. Their eyes glowed brighter, the air around them trembling as power surged through ancient systems. The ice cracked and hissed under their weight. For the first time in 2 centuries, Earth's sleeping giants were awake, and they were looking for something to destroy. The enemy arrives. The first sign of the Vorak wasn't an attack. It was the silence. One moment, space around Earth was alive with human chatter, civilian ships talking to stations, research satellites sending weather reports, Explorers checking in from the asteroid belt. The next moment, nothing. In the command center of Outpost K-17, Mara stared at her console. Every comm channel from beyond Mars had gone dark. It wasn't static, it wasn't jamming, it was as if the voices had been erased mid-sentence. Sentinel-3's voice came sharp and low. "They are inside the system." Mara's pulse quickened. "How close?" A glowing display lit up, 3 dots sliding past Neptune's orbit. They moved in perfect formation, too fast for normal engines, and each one pulsed with an unnatural black energy. Sentinel's tone grew heavier. "Vorak scouts, advanced pattern, they are mapping human defenses." Far above Mars, in the cold void, the Vorak ships drifted like shadows. They were not made of metal like human vessels. Their hulls were jagged bone and dark crystal, as if grown instead of built. No lights marked their position. They moved without sound, without warning, predators gliding in a sea of stars. But it wasn't just the ships that worried Sentinel, it was their path. They are heading straight for the Guardians. On the frozen plains of Antarctica, Guardian 1 and Guardian 6 stood motionless in the snow. The wind howled around them, but their glowing eyes never left the same spot in the sky, the place where the Vorak ships would appear. Mara felt the weight of their stillness. These weren't just machines. They were predators too. Ancient predators built for a war humanity had forgotten. And now, they were about to meet their prey again. The first confrontation came near Titan, Saturn's largest moon. A science outpost there had detected strange readings, massive gravitational spikes that made instruments glitch. 2 unmanned cargo freighters were ordered to change course. They never answered. When the Vorak appeared, they didn't open fire. They simply passed close to the outpost. Every sensor, every camera, every single digital system went dead instantly. And then, the walls of the station began to rust. Not slowly, instantly, as if centuries of decay had been forced into seconds. The Vorak didn't just destroy. They erased life itself. Back at Outpost K-17, Mara slammed her hand on the console. "Sentinel, we have to warn them. We have to send a fleet." Sentinel's voice was calm but cold. "A fleet will die. Only the Guardians can face them." Mara gritted her teeth. "Then send the Guardians." "They cannot leave without activation from the commander," Sentinel replied. Mara froze. "You mean me?" "Yes." She looked at the 2 giants outside. They stood in the blizzard like statues, their armor lit with faint pulses of light, waiting for her word. Somewhere beyond Saturn, the Vorak scouts turned. They had seen enough. They were coming closer now, straight toward Earth. Sentinel's voice dropped to a whisper only Mara could hear. "The swarm will not come all at once. They will test us first. When they do, Commander, you must let the Guardians hunt." And deep under the Pacific Oaks, Ian, in a vault sealed since before human history was written, something enormous opened its eyes. First strike. The Vorak scouts did not wait long. They slipped past Saturn's rings like shadows through fog, their hulls shimmering with a strange black haze that swallowed light. They made no sound, sent no signal, but their presence was felt. Even the Guardians, machines without fear, shifted their stance, their glowing eyes narrowing toward the stars. On the surface, Earth was still unaware. News channels spoke only of minor communication issues and possible solar storms. The governments wanted calm, but in Outpost K-17, Mara saw the truth on her screens. 3 enemy ships were now inside Jupiter's orbit. They were heading for Ganymede Station, a bustling civilian hub with thousands of people. "Sentinel," she said, her voice tight. "We have to move the Guardians now." The AI's voice was like cold steel. "Commander, confirmed deployment." She swallowed hard. "Deploy them." The ice around Guardian 1 and Guardian 6 exploded in steam. Engines older than nations roared awake, burning with a light so bright it cut through the Antarctic storm. The ground shook for miles as the giants rose fully, snow sliding from their armored shoulders. From a hidden launch platform deep beneath the ice, massive clamps released. A glowing tunnel of energy formed above them, bending space itself. The 2 Guardians stepped forward and vanished. They reappeared in the void near Ganymede. The civilians never saw the Vorak ships arrive. One moment, the station's windows showed empty space. The next, three black shapes blotted out the stars. Their hulls seemed alive, pulsing with a slow heartbeat. The darkness around them twisted like water, bending light in unnatural ways. Without warning, the lead Vorak ship opened its mouth, not a weapon port, but an actual jagged bone-like maw, and unleashed a wave of pure decay. Every metal surface it touched began to corrode. Station alarms reamed as walls turned brittle, collapsing in flakes of rust. Then the Guardians struck. Guardian 1's main weapon, a glowing arm cannon the size of a city bus, fired a beam of condensed light so bright it lit the station's shadowed decks. The blast tore through the first Vorak ship, punching a hole straight through its twisted hull. Guardian 6 moved faster, too fast for something so huge, closing the distance with the second enemy. Its four arms became a blur, striking with weapons that hummed like an ancient hymn. The Vorak ship screamed, not with sound, but with a pulse that shook the minds of every human nearby. Inside Outpost K-17, Mara watched in awe. They're winning. Sentinel's tone was steady. They are fighting. Victory is not certain. Mara frowned. What do you mean? The third Vorak ship had stayed back. It hadn't fired a single shot. Instead, it moved carefully, avoiding the Guardians' lines of fire, as if it knew exactly how to dodge them. And when it finally attacked, it didn't strike the machines at all. It struck the station. With one blast of dark energy, Ganymede's main reactor began to overload. The civilians didn't know it yet, but in less than 6 minutes, the station would tear itself apart. Guardian 1, Mara shouted over the comms. The station's going to blow. You have to protect the people. The giant didn't hesitate. It turned from its crippled enemy and placed itself between the station and the incoming blast from the third Vorak. The hit slammed into its chest, sending ripples of light across its armor, but it did not fall. Guardian 6 finished off the second Vorak with a strike that shattered its bone crystal hull. Then both machines turned to face the last enemy. But by then, it was already retreating. The Vorak ship slipped back into the blackness of space, leaving behind only wreckage and a silent promise that it would return. Mara sank into her chair, heart pounding. They ran? No, Sentinel said quietly. They tested us. Now they will call the swarm. Somewhere deep inside Mara's chest, fear and determination began to fight for space. If this was only the test, she couldn't imagine what the real war would look like. And far out beyond Pluto, hundreds of faint shadows began to move toward the sun. The betrayal. The world should have celebrated. The news of the Guardians' victory over the Vorak scouts spread fast, though most of it was rumor, leaked footage, and shaky transmissions. People called them giant protectors, Earth saviors, even gods. But in the halls of power, there was no celebration. Because someone, somewhere, had known the Vorak were coming. Back in Outpost K-17, Mara sat at her console replaying the battle logs. She couldn't shake the image of the third Vorak ship avoiding Guardian fire, as if it had studied them. She isolated the movement patterns and her stomach dropped. The enemy had taken paths that perfectly avoided weapons they shouldn't even know existed. She turned to Sentinel. How did they know these systems were sealed for centuries? The AI's voice was quiet. They did not guess, Commander, they remembered. Mara frowned. What do you mean, remembered? There was a time, Sentinel said slowly, when not all of humanity agreed to fight the Vorak. Some feared that war would destroy us completely. They believed surrender, or alliance, was the only way to survive. When the Guardians won the war, those humans helped lock us away. Her hands tightened into fists. And their descendants are still out there? Yes, Sentinel replied. In your governments, in your fleets, and they are speaking to the Vorak right now. While the Guardians repaired on the frozen plains, Mara left Antarctica for the first time in months. She traveled under a false name using a small transport ship to reach a military relay station in orbit above Earth. Sentinel had traced the traitor's signal here. His station commander, a tall man with sharp eyes, greeted her with false warmth. Lieutenant Voss, or should I say commander, quite a promotion. Mara studied him carefully. How do you know that? He smiled faintly. Word travels fast when you know where to listen. Her instincts screamed danger. She tapped the small device in her pocket, opening a private channel to Sentinel. He's the one, she whispered. The conversation turned cold quickly. You shouldn't have woken them, the commander said, stepping closer. The Guardians are dangerous. They don't belong to you. They don't belong to Earth. They're relics of a war we should have stayed out of. Mara's eyes narrowed. And you think the Vorak will spare us if we just hand over the planet? His smile didn't reach his eyes. Not the planet, just the Guardians. Without them, the Vorak have no reason to burn us. That was the deal. Her voice sharpened. A deal? You've been talking to them? His hand brushed the console behind him, and the lights in the room flickered. Somewhere far away, Sentinel's voice cut through her earpiece. Commander, he's sending coordinates, Vorak intercept codes. They will know where the Guardians are. Mara moved first. She slammed the commander's arm away from the console, hitting the emergency lock on the terminal, but it was too late. A fragment of the message had already gone out. Back in the Antarctic vault, Guardian 1's eyes blazed bright red. Sentinel's voice filled the air. Vorak Strike Force inbound. They are not testing us this time. They are coming to kill the Guardians. Mara shoved the commander against the wall. You just signed the planet's death warrant. But he didn't look afraid. He leaned in, whispering, No, Commander. I just made sure we survive without your machines. She wanted to hit him. Instead, she turned and ran for her ship. There was no time to waste. The Guardians had to move. As she left, the commander called after her, voice echoing in the metal corridor. They're not your allies, Voss. They're weapons. And weapons turn on their makers. In the dark beyond Mars, the Vorak ships changed course. They weren't hunting cities now. They were hunting giants. The last stand. The Vorak were no longer shadows. They came in force, 30 warships, each the size of a city, sliding into the solar system like a tide of black fire. Their hulls pulsed with that unnatural heartbeat, their jagged frames crowned with glowing spines. They didn't hide. They didn't slow. They came straight for Earth. In Outpost K-17, every alarm screamed at once. Mara's console filled with red alerts, trajectory paths, impact windows, evacuation orders. Civilian ships fled toward the Moon and Mars, but Sentinel's calm voice cut through the chaos. Commander, the Guardians will hold at Lagrange Point 1. If they reach Earth's atmosphere, we lose everything. Mara looked at the map. The Vorak fleet would arrive in hours. The Guardians were already moving, 24 massive war machines marching into position across space. Some emerged from hidden launch vaults in deserts, mountains, and oceans. Others burst from frozen bunkers in clouds of ice and steam. The people of Earth saw them for the first time. Cities stopped. Crowds filled rooftops and streets, staring at the giants that had been sleeping beneath their feet all along. Above Earth, Guardian 1 and Guardian 6 took point. Their armor glowed with lines of living light, power surging through systems that had been dormant for centuries. Mara's voice echoed across the encrypted comms. This is it. We stop them here. Sentinel's tone was colder than ever. Commander, the Guardians do not expect to return. Her breath caught. What are you saying? There is a final protocol. If the Vorak breach the line, the Guardians will activate the Leviathan weapon. It will destroy the enemy fleet, but it will consume the Guardians as well. Mara gripped the console. There has to be another way. There isn't, Sentinel said. The swarm leaves no survivors. We do not fight to win. We fight to leave something behind. The first Vorak wave hit like a meteor storm. Black lances of energy tore across the void, punching holes in asteroid shields and ripping apart unmanned defense platforms. The Guardians answered with weapons older than human memory, beams of sunfire, blades of condensed plasma, storms of magnetized shrapnel. Space became a battlefield of light and shadow, war machine against war beast. Guardian 6 tore through a Vorak dreadnought, its 4 arms striking in a blur of motion. Guardian 4 shielded an orbital station, absorbing blast after blast until its armor cracked and split. Guardian 12 charged headlong into a swarm of smaller Vorak craft, detonating in a flash that vaporized them all. Mara's hands shook as she tracked the battle. Every victory cost lives. Every enemy destroyed seemed to be replaced by two more, and still the Vorak pushed closer. Then the worst happened. A massive Vorak flagship, larger than any other, broke through the center of the line. Its bone crystal hull glowed blood red. Mara's reading spiked. "Sentinel, what is that?" "The Swarm Lord," Sentinel said. "It commands the fleet. If it reaches Earth, there will be no need for an invasion. It will strip the planet bare from orbit." Guardian 1 stepped forward, its voice rumbling across the comms for the first time. "Commander, give the order." Mara knew what they meant. The Leviathan weapon, the final protocol. Her throat tightened. "If you use it, you won't survive." Guardian 1 was silent for a moment, then it said, "We were not built to survive. We were built to keep the promise." As the Swarm Lord closed in, the Guardians shifted formation. 23 giants formed a wall of living metal around Guardian On, shielding it from the enemy's fire. The glow along its armor turned blinding white. Energy began to gather at its core, a storm that could unmake worlds. Mara could barely breathe. She didn't know if she was about to witness salvation or the end of every Guardian left. The promise kept, the void was burning. Everywhere Mara looked, flashes of light tore through the blackness, Vorak ships erupting in flame, Guardians shattering under enemy fire, fragments of metal spinning silently away into the endless dark. But in the center of it all stood Guardian 1, unmoving, its armor glowing like a newborn star. The Leviathan protocol was almost ready. "Commander," Sentinel's voice came through the comm, low and steady. "When the charge reaches full capacity, you must clear the area. The blast will consume everything within 100,000 kilometers." Mara's voice cracked. "That's half the Guardians. We'll lose them." Sentinel didn't answer. It didn't have to. She knew there was no other way. The Swarm Lord loomed closer. Its hull was alive with twisting shapes, bone and crystal fusing together like molten glass. From its open maw poured streams of crimson energy, burning through the Guardian's last defensive line. Guardian 6 intercepted one of those blasts, shielding Guardian 1. Armor peeled away. Limbs buckled. Still, it did not fall. One by one, the Guardians locked into position around their leader, their weapons firing in perfect unison. The space between them blazed with light, forcing the Vorak fleet to slow, to turn, to shield their monstrous commander. Inside Outpost K-17, Mara gripped the edge of her console so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Guardian 1, if you do this," its voice rumbled through the comms, slow and unshakable. "We keep the promise." The charge reached full power. Guardian 1's chest split open, revealing a sphere of pure, burning light. The glow grew until it was impossible to look at, its edges blurring into the fabric of space. The air, or what passed for air inside Mara's ship, vibrated with a sound too deep to be heard by human ears. The Vorak sensed it. The Swarm Lord turned, pulling its fleet into a tight circle around itself, but it was too late. Guardian 1 stepped forward, raising its cannon arm toward the heart of the enemy. Leviathan, unleashed. The beam was not fire, nor plasma, nor anything humans had words for. It was a piece of a dying star, focused into a single, endless moment. It tore through the Swarm Lord's hull as if it were paper, passing straight through it and into the fleet beyond. Vorak ships exploded in blinding silence. The black haze that surrounded them burned away, revealing their twisted forms before they shattered into dust. The beam didn't stop until there was nothing left in its path. When the light faded, half the sky was empty. The Swarm Lord was gone. The Vorak fleet was gone. But so were most of the Guardians. Guardian 1 floated in the dark, its armor cracked, its light fading. Mara's voice was a whisper over the comm. "Guardian 1, can you hear me?" There was a pause, then a faint reply. "Promise kept." The light in its eyes dimmed, its massive frame drifted, silent and still. Weeks later, Earth stood free. The SOS sender finally arrived, a battered alien fleet, survivors of a war they had fought alone for too long. Their leader, a tall figure of silver and blue, met Mara at the foot of Guardian 1's resting place. "We sent the call," the alien said. "We did not think anyone would answer." Mara looked up at the silent giant. "We answered because we promised we would, a long time ago." The alien bowed its head. "Then you are truly the Guardians they spoke of." The surviving Guardians were taken back to their hidden vaults, their armor repaired but their numbers forever fewer. Sentinel remained at Outpost K-17, silent except for one line of code left on Mara's console. "When the next call comes, wake us." And far beyond the stars, in places no human had ever seen, other ancient machines stirred, hearing the echo of a promise kept.